Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the USS Blackstar and watched the stars through the massive view screen. The ship was quiet except for the soft hum of the engines. 300 human crew members worked at their stations, doing their jobs like they had done every day for the past 2 years. The Blackstar was different from other ships in the galaxy. It was bigger, darker, and built with secrets that most aliens would never understand. For 30 years, humans had worked in hidden shipyards, taking pieces of alien technology and making them better. They learned from every species they met. The tall Zephyrians taught them about strong metal. The smart Nexari showed them about computers. The strange Voidkin helped them understand energy. But the aliens never thought humans were important. They saw humans as workers, not warriors. Humans fixed their machines, dug in their mines, and built their cities. The galaxy was happy to let humans do the boring work, while the real species handled the important things like politics and war. Jake Morrison was 42 years old and had spent 20 years in space. He had brown hair that was getting gray, at the sides and blue eyes that had seen too much. His crew trusted him because he always kept them safe. The aliens respected him because he was polite and never caused trouble. But Jake Morrison had secrets just like his ship. Lieutenant Commander Lisa Carter sat at the tactical station. She was 35 years old with short black hair and quick hands that could work any weapon system ever built. Lisa had been with Jake for 10 years. She understood what the Blackstar could really do. The ship looked like a normal military vessel from the outside, but inside it was something the galaxy had never seen before. The peaceful morning ended when Lisa's station started beeping. She looked at her screens and her face went pale. "Captain," she said in a quiet voice, "I'm getting distress signals from New Haven colony." Jake walked over to her station. New Haven was a human colony with 50,000 people. Families lived there. Children played in the streets. It was supposed to be safe. "What kind of distress signal?" Lisa's fingers moved quickly across her controls. The main screen changed to show recorded messages from New Haven. The first message showed a woman with blood on her face. Behind her, buildings were burning. "This is New Haven colony. We are under attack. Unknown ships are bombing our cities. Send help immediately." The second message was worse. A man was screaming into the camera. "They're landing troops. They're taking prisoners. The defense grid is down. Please, someone help us." The message ended with the sound of energy weapons firing. Jake felt something cold in his stomach. "How many ships attacked them?" "At least 50, Captain. Big ones." The attack signatures match Skarn military vessels. The Skarn were a species that looked like giant lizards. They stood 8 feet tall and had scales instead of skin. They believed that strong species should rule weak ones. They had been expanding their territory for years, taking planets from anyone who could not fight back. The Galactic Coalition usually stopped them, but this time was different. Commander Rick Hayes, the chief engineer, came onto the bridge. He was a thin man with smart eyes and hands that were always dirty from working on machines. "Captain, I'm also getting signals from Aurora Prime. Same thing. Skarn ships bombing ground troops. 2 human colonies attacked on the same day. This was not random. This was planned." Jake knew that the Skarn were testing something. They wanted to see if anyone would defend the humans. "Sir," Lisa said, "I'm getting a transmission from Coalition headquarters." The screen changed to show Admiral Frank Butler. He was the highest-ranking human in the Coalition military. Frank was 60 years old with gray hair and a tired face. Behind him, Jake could see alien officers talking in groups. "Jake, you're getting the distress signals, aren't you?" "Yes, sir. What are our orders?" Frank looked around at the aliens behind him. "The Coalition Council is meeting now. The Nexari want to try diplomacy first. The Zephyrians say their fleets are too far away to help. The Voidkin are doing whatever it is they do when they don't want to make decisions." Jake felt anger building in his chest. "Sir, there are 100,000 human civilians on those colonies. They need help now, not next week." "I know, Jake. I've been arguing for 3 hours, but the Council hasn't authorized military action yet. They want to send a diplomatic message to the Skarn first." Lisa looked at her captain. She could see the anger in his eyes. The same anger she felt. The same anger that every human felt when they realized the truth. The galaxy didn't care about human lives. They cared about politics and rules and keeping everyone happy. But they didn't care about human children being killed by lizard monsters. Jake made a decision that would change everything. He walked to the center of the bridge and looked at his crew. Every person there was human. Every person there had joined the coalition military to protect their people. Every person there had been told to wait while their families died. "Admiral Butler," Jake said in a clear voice, "please inform the Coalition Council that humanity withdraws from the Galactic Coalition, effective immediately." Frank's eyes went wide. "Jake, you can't do that. You don't have the authority." "I have the authority to protect human lives, and that's what I'm going to do." Jake turned to his crew. "All hands, this is the captain. We are leaving Coalition space. We are going to save our people. Anyone who wants to transfer off this ship can do so now. But anyone who stays is going to war." Not one person moved to leave. Jake turned to the pilot. Lieutenant Susan Parker was 28 years old and could fly anything that moved through space. She had blonde hair and green eyes and had never lost a race or a fight. "Susan, set course for Skarn space. Maximum speed." "Yes, sir. How many ships are we bringing?" Jake smiled, but it was not a happy smile. It was the smile of a man who had been pushed too far. "Just us." The Blackstar turned away from Coalition space and jumped into hyperspace. Behind them, the aliens continued to debate and discuss and argue about the proper way to handle the situation. Ahead of them, the Skarn military was about to learn something important about humans. They were about to learn what happened when you hurt a human's family. The war was about to begin. The USS Blackstar dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Skarn home system. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge and looked at what waited for them. His tactical officer, Lisa Carter, counted the enemy ships on her screen. "Captain, I'm reading 212 Skarn vessels. They're arranged in battle formation around their biggest ship." Lisa's voice was steady, but Jake could hear the worry underneath. "That big one is the World Render. It's their flagship. Never been beaten in a fight," Jake nodded. The World Render was 3 times the size of the Blackstar. It had enough weapons to destroy a small moon. Around it, dozens of smaller warships moved in perfect patterns. The Skarn had built this fleet to attack more human colonies. They planned to wipe out every human settlement in this part of the galaxy. Commander Rick Hayes came onto the bridge. His hands were covered in grease and his uniform had burn marks on it. For the past 3 days, he had been working on the ship's systems, without sleep. "Captain, the modifications are ready." Jake looked at his chief engineer. Rick was the smartest man he had ever met. If Rick said the modifications were ready, then they were ready. But Jake still worried. What they were about to try had never been done before. "Tell me about the changes, Rick." Rick wiped his hands on a cloth and pointed to a display screen. "The reactor core is running at 150% normal power. That should give us enough energy for what we need to do. The weapon systems are connected to our mining equipment. Instead of digging through rock, we'll be digging through Skarn armor." "What about the shields?" "That's the interesting part. We don't have shields anymore. We have something better." Rick smiled like a man who had just solved an impossible puzzle. "We have a gravitational field generator. It bends space around our ship. Energy weapons will curve away from us. Physical projectiles will miss us completely." Lieutenant Susan Parker, the ship's pilot, listened to every word. She was young, but she understood what Rick was saying. The Blackstar had become something new, something that had never existed before in the galaxy. "How fast can we move with these changes?" Susan asked. "Faster than anything our size should be able to move. The gravitational field reduces our mass. We can turn like a fighter but hit like a battleship." Jake looked at his crew. Every person on the bridge was human. Every person understood what they were about to do. They were going to fight 200 ships with one ship. Most people would call that suicide. Humans called it Tuesday. "Lisa, open a channel to the Skarn fleet." The main screen changed to show a Skarn commander. He was 8 feet tall, with dark green scales and yellow eyes. His teeth were sharp and his claws were long. He looked like something from a human nightmare. "I am War Leader Skarks of the Hegemony Fleet. You are one small human ship. You will surrender now or be destroyed." Jake stepped forward, so the Skarn could see him clearly. "I am Captain Jake Morrison of the USS Blackstar. You attacked human colonies, you killed human families, you took human prisoners. That was a mistake." Skarks laughed. It sounded like rocks grinding together. "One ship against my entire fleet? You humans are even more stupid than we thought. You're about to learn something about humans," Jake said. "We don't know when to quit." Jake cut the transmission and turned to his crew. "Susan, take us in. Lisa, prepare all weapons. Rick, give me everything the ship has." The Blackstar moved forward into the Skarn formation. The enemy ships opened. Fire immediately. Hundreds of energy beams and plasma bolts flew toward the human ship. The crew held their breath and waited for the impact. The energy weapons curved around the Blackstar like water flowing around a rock. The plasma bolts missed completely, flying off into empty space. The gravitational field was working perfectly. "Return. Fire," Jake ordered. The Blackstar's modified weapons fired for the first time. The energy beams that came out were brighter and stronger than anything the Skarn had ever seen. The first beam hit a Skarn cruiser and cut it in half. The second beam destroyed 2 ships at once. The third beam punched through a battleship's armor like it was made of paper. "Impossible," Lisa whispered as she watched her tactical display. "Captain, we just destroyed 6 ships with 3 shots." The Skarn fleet tried to surround the Blackstar, but Susan Parker was ready for them. She flew the big ship like it was a small fighter. The Blackstar spun and twisted through the enemy formation. It moved so fast that the Skarn gunners could not track it. It moved so smoothly that it seemed to dance between the enemy ships. More Skarn ships exploded. The human weapons were too powerful and the human pilot was too good. The enemy had expected to fight a normal ship with normal weapons and normal tactics. Instead, they were fighting something that broke all the rules. War Leader Skarks watched from the bridge of the world render as his fleet was torn apart. In 10 minutes, the humans had destroyed 30 ships. His best captains were dead. His most powerful weapons were useless. "All ships, concentrate fire on the human vessel," Skarks ordered. "Bring the world render to full power. We will ram them, if we have to." The world render was the pride of the Skarn military. It had won 100 battles. Its weapons could destroy cities. Its armor had never been broken. Skarks was sure that his flagship could handle 1 human ship, no matter how strange it was. The world render fired its main weapon. The energy beam was as wide as a building and bright as a star. It hit the Blackstar directly. The human ship disappeared in a ball of light and fire. "Target destroyed," reported a Skarn officer. But then the light faded, and the Blackstar was still there. The gravitational field had bent the massive energy beam around the ship. The human vessel was completely undamaged. "Jake," Morrison smiled. "Susan, ram the world render, right through the middle." "Yes, sir." The Blackstar accelerated directly toward the Skarn flagship. The gravitational field created a bubble of twisted space around the human ship. When the Blackstar hit the world render, it did not crash. It passed through the enemy ship like a bullet through paper. The world render broke apart. Its hull split open and its crew was scattered into space. War Leader Skarks had just enough time to send one last message before his ship exploded. "Warning to all Skarn forces. The humans have a monster ship. It cannot be stopped. It cannot be destroyed. Retreat. Retreat now." The surviving Skarn ships turned and ran. They jumped into hyperspace as fast as they could, leaving behind the wreckage of half their fleet. Jake looked at the tactical display. In 20 minutes, they had destroyed over 100 enemy ships. The most powerful Skarn fleet in the galaxy had been scattered by 1 human vessel. "Lisa, any casualties on our side?" "None, Captain, not even a scratch on the hull." Jake nodded. The first battle was over, but the war was just beginning. The galaxy was about to learn what humans could do when they stopped following the rules. The yacht, USS Blackstar had entered the war, and nothing had survived its path. News of the Blackstar's victory spread across the galaxy faster than light. In Coalition headquarters, alien leaders watched the battle recordings with shock and fear. The Nexari, who thought they were the smartest species in the galaxy, could not understand how humans had built such a weapon. The Zephyrians, who prided themselves on being the greatest warriors, realized that humans had been hiding their true strength for decades. Admiral Frank Butler received an official message from the Coalition Council. They were expelling all humans from Coalition space. They called humanity's actions reckless and dangerous. They said Captain Morrison was a war criminal who needed to be stopped. Frank read the message and threw it in the trash. He had watched the recordings of New Haven Colony. He had seen the burned buildings and the dead children. He knew exactly why Jake Morrison had done what he did. Meanwhile, the USS Blackstar did not return to human space. Captain Jake Morrison had made his choice. He was going to hunt down every Skarn military base in the galaxy. He was going to make sure they never attacked human colonies again. "Lisa, what's our next target?" Jake asked his tactical officer. "Lieutenant Commander Lisa." Carter looked at her star charts. She had been studying Skarn military positions for days. "There's a supply depot at Korvac Station. They use it to fuel their warships and store weapons. If we destroy it, their entire Outer Rim fleet will be stuck without supplies." Jake nodded. "How many ships are guarding it?" 20 cruisers and about 50 smaller vessels. They think it's safe because it's deep in Skarn territory. They're wrong. Susan, set course for Korvac Station." Lieutenant Susan Parker smiled as she programmed the navigation computer. She had been flying the Blackstar for 3 days straight, and she was getting better at controlling the ship's new abilities. The gravitational field made the big ship move like a dancer. She could spin it, flip it, and make it change direction, faster than the enemy could react. Dr. Amy Johnson was working in the medical bay when the ship jumped to hyperspace. She was not treating wounded crew members because the Blackstar had not taken any damage in the battle. Instead, she was studying samples of Skarn technology that Rick Hayes had brought her. Amy was a xenobiologist, which meant she studied alien life forms. She had been examining Skarn computer systems and had found something terrible. The Skarn had been capturing humans from the colonies they attacked. They were running experiments on human prisoners, trying to understand what made humans so adaptable. Amy brought her findings to Captain Morrison. "Jake, you need to see this. The Skarn have been torturing our people. They're trying to figure out why humans can learn and change so quickly." Jake looked at the data on Amy's tablet. The pictures showed human prisoners in Skarn laboratories. They were being tested and studied like animals. Some of the prisoners were children. Jake felt something cold and hard settle in his chest. This was not just a war anymore. This was personal. The Blackstar dropped out of hyperspace near Korvac Station. The space station was huge, with dozens of docking arms for Skarn warships. Fuel tanks and weapon storage pods floated around it like metal planets. Commander Steve Walsh, the head of security, was monitoring Skarn communications. He was a big man with dark skin and careful eyes. He had been a soldier before he joined the Blackstar's crew, and he understood how to fight enemies who thought they were safe. "Captain, the Skarn are panicking. They're getting reports from survivors of the first battle. They know we're coming, but they don't know when or where." Jake smiled. Fear was a weapon, and the Skarn were learning to be afraid of humans. "Open a channel to the station," Jake ordered. The main screen showed a Skarn commander with red scales and angry yellow eyes. "Human ship, you are in Skarn territory. Leave now or be destroyed." Jake looked at the alien calmly. "I am Captain Morrison, of the USS Blackstar. You have human prisoners in your laboratories. Release them now and I might let some of you live." The Skarn commander laughed. "We have 70 ships here, human. You have one. You cannot win." Jake's expression did not change. "You're about to learn something about human mathematics. 1. Human ship equals 0 Skarn ships." The battle began immediately. The Skarn ships opened fire with everything they had. Energy beams and plasma missiles filled the space around Korvac Station. But the Blackstar moved through the attack like it was dancing through raindrops. Susan Parker flew the ship in patterns that the Skarn had never seen before. She used the station's own structure as cover, hiding behind fuel tanks and weapon storage pods. When Skarn ships fired at her, she moved so that their weapons hit their own station instead. Lisa Carter fired the Blackstar's weapons with perfect timing. Each shot destroyed a Skarn ship or damaged the station's defenses. The modified mining equipment cut through alien armor like it was cutting through soft rock. But this battle was different from the first one. Jake Morrison was not just destroying the enemy, he was sending a message. Chief Communications Officer Laura Miller was a young woman with red hair and a talent for electronic warfare. She had hacked into the Skarn communication system and was broadcasting on all their military frequencies. While the Blackstar destroyed Skarn ships, Laura played human music through their communications. She played laughter from human children. She played recordings of human families singing together. The Skarn soldiers heard the sounds of life and joy while they watched their comrades die. "This is psychological warfare," Steve Walsh explained to the younger crew members. "We want them to understand that they're not just fighting ships and weapons. They're fighting a species that refuses to give up." The battle lasted 2 hours. When it was over, Korvac Station was a burning wreck floating in space. 70 Skarn warships had been reduced to metal debris. The Blackstar had not taken a single hit, but Jake Morrison was not finished. The station's computer systems contained information about other Skarn bases. Rick Hayes and Amy Johnson worked together to decode the alien files. They found the locations of prison camps where humans were being held. "Captain," Amy said, "there are 12 facilities where they're keeping our people. Some of the prisoners have been there for months." Jake looked at the star chart showing the prison locations. Each one was heavily defended. Each one would be a major battle. Most ship captains would say it was impossible to attack them all. Jake Morrison was not most ship captains. "Plot a course to the nearest prison camp," he ordered. "We're going to get our people back." Over the next month, the USS Blackstar became a legend of terror to the Skarn military. It appeared without warning at military bases, destroyed everything in sight, and disappeared before reinforcements could arrive. Skarn officers began refusing dangerous assignments. Some colonies surrendered without a fight when they detected the Blackstar approaching. The galaxy watched in amazement as one human ship dismantled an entire military empire. Species that had dismissed humanity as weak and boring began to reconsider their opinions. If humans could build one ship like the Blackstar, how many more were they building in secret? Captain Morrison did not know that he was changing the balance of power in the galaxy. He only knew that his people had been hurt, and he was going to make sure it never happened again. The hunt had begun, and nothing could stop it. 6 months had passed since the USS Blackstar began its war against the Skarn. The galaxy had changed in ways that no one expected. The Skarn hegemony, once a major power that controlled hundreds of star systems, was falling apart. Their territory had shrunk by more than half. Their trade routes were in chaos. Their military leaders were hiding in bunkers on distant planets. Other alien species watched these events with growing worry. The Nexari held emergency meetings in their crystal cities. The Zephyrians gathered their war councils on mountain peaks. The Voidkin floated in their meditation chambers, trying to see possible futures. All of them reached the same conclusion. Humans were more dangerous than anyone had realized. Admiral Korvax of the Nexari was considered the smartest military leader in the galaxy. He had studied every battle in galactic history. He had won wars against species that most others feared to fight. Now he sat in his command chamber, staring at recordings of the Blackstar's attacks. "How is this possible?" he asked his aide, a younger Nexari with blue skin and silver eyes. "One ship has destroyed an empire that took centuries to build." "The humans are unpredictable, Admiral. Our computer models cannot calculate their next move because they do not follow logical patterns." Admiral Korvax nodded slowly. The Nexari were logical. They planned every move carefully. They calculated probabilities and chose the safest path to victory. Humans seemed to do the opposite. They took impossible risks and somehow made them work. The crisis reached its peak when the Zephyrian High Command received a message from their spies in Skarn territory. The spies' report was simple and terrifying. The Death Ship is coming to the core systems. The Skarn government is preparing to evacuate their homeworld. Their entire civilization is collapsing. Within days, representatives from 12 major species met on the neutral station called Harmony Point. They had never worked together before, but fear of humanity brought them together now. The human problem must be solved, declared War Chief Thrax of the Zephyrians. He was 9 feet tall with 4 arms and skin like living stone. One species cannot be allowed to destabilize the entire galaxy. I agree, said Admiral Korvax, but this is not a simple problem. The humans have shown abilities that we did not know they possessed. Their ship moves in ways that our physics say should be impossible. The Voidkin representative spoke in a voice like wind through empty spaces. We have tried to see the future paths of this conflict, but human actions create chaos in the timeline. We cannot predict what they will do next. The Alien Alliance made their decision. They would gather the largest fleet in galactic history and destroy the USS Blackstar. 500 ships from 12 different species would hunt down the human vessel and end the threat once and for all. Captain Jake Morrison did not know about the alien fleet that was coming for him. He was too busy completing his mission. The Blackstar had just finished rescuing the last group of human prisoners from a Skarn laboratory. Dr. Amy Johnson was treating the rescued humans in the medical bay while Jake stood in the corridor, watching through the window. The prisoners were in bad condition. They had been starved, tested, and tortured for months. Some of them were children who had been taken from New Haven Colony, but they were alive, and they were free. Captain, said Commander Rick Hayes as he approached, we need to talk about the ship's condition. Jake followed Rick to the engineering section. The chief engineer looked tired and worried. His hands were shaking slightly and there were dark circles under his eyes. The truth is, Jake, we're falling apart. The reactor has been running at maximum power for 6 months. The gravitational field generator is showing stress fractures. The weapon systems are burning out faster than I can repair them. How much time do we have? Maybe a few weeks, maybe less. We've pushed this ship beyond its limits and it's starting to break down. Jake nodded. He had known this day would come. The Blackstar had performed miracles, but miracles always came with a price. Lieutenant Commander Lisa Carter's voice came over the ship's communication system. Captain to the bridge. We're receiving a priority message from Coalition Space. Jake made his way to the bridge, where Lisa was waiting with a grim expression on her face. It's from Admiral Butler. He says it's urgent. The main screen showed Frank Butler sitting in what looked like a bunker. His face was pale and his voice was shaking. Jake, you need to hear this. The aliens have formed an alliance. 500 ships are coming for you. Admiral Korvax is leading them. They're calling it the largest military force in galactic history. Jake felt something cold in his stomach. 500 ships was more than even the Blackstar could handle, especially with the ship's systems failing. Where are they going? Jake asked. They're heading to New Haven. They think you'll go back there to visit the memorial site. Jake, it's a trap. Don't go there. Jake looked around his bridge at the crew who had followed him into war. Susan Parker was checking her pilot controls. Lisa Carter was analyzing tactical data. Rick Hayes was monitoring the ship's failing systems. Every one of them was ready to follow him into another impossible battle. Frank, Jake said, send a message to all human colonies. Tell them to prepare their defenses. If something happens to us, they'll need to protect themselves. Jake, don't do this. 500 ships is suicide even for you. Jake smiled. It was the same smile he had worn when he first decided to leave Coalition Space. Frank, do you remember what you taught me when I was a young officer? You said that sometimes the best defense is a good offense. Jake cut the transmission and turned to his crew. Susan, set course for New Haven. Captain, Lisa said carefully, Admiral Butler is right. This is a trap. They're using the colony memorial to draw us in. I know it's a trap, Lisa, but that memorial represents every human who died because the galaxy decided our lives didn't matter. I'm not going to let 500 alien ships sit there and mock their sacrifice. Susan programmed the navigation computer. Course laid in, Captain. Rick, how much power can you give me for one last battle? The chief engineer thought for a moment. I can give you everything the ship has, but after that we're done. The reactor will shut down permanently. Jake nodded. He understood. The Blackstar had one more fight in it and then it would be over. All hands, Jake announced over the ship's communication system. This is the captain. We are going to face impossible odds one more time. 500 enemy ships are waiting for us. Our own ship is failing. By all logical calculations, we cannot win this battle. He paused, looking around the bridge at his crew. But we are not a logical species. We are humans. We do not know when to quit. We do not know when to surrender. And we do not know when to stop fighting for what is right. Today, we show the galaxy what happens when they underestimate human determination. The USS Blackstar jumped into hyperspace one last time, heading toward New Haven and the largest space battle in galactic history. The USS Blackstar dropped out of hyperspace at the ruins of New Haven Colony. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge and looked at the place where 50,000 humans had once lived. Now there was only debris floating in space and a small memorial beacon that marked where the colony had been. Around the memorial, 500 alien warships waited in perfect formation. Admiral Korvex had arranged his fleet in a sphere around the area, making escape impossible. Ships from 12 different species floated in the darkness, their weapons pointed at the empty space where the Blackstar would appear. Captain, said Lieutenant Commander Lisa Carter, I count 512 enemy vessels, Nixari battleships, Zephyrian dreadnoughts, Voidkin energy ships, and others. This is the largest fleet ever assembled. Jake nodded. He could see the massive alien ships on his view screen. Each one was bigger than the Blackstar. Each one had enough firepower to destroy a city. Together, they represented the combined military might of most of the galaxy. Any messages from the fleet? Jake asked. Yes, sir. Admiral Korvex wants to talk. The main screen changed to show the Nixari commander. He had blue skin and silver eyes that seemed to glow with intelligence. Behind him, Jake could see the bridge of the largest ship in the fleet, filled with officers from different alien species. Captain Morrison, Admiral Korvex said in a calm voice, you are surrounded. Your ship is outnumbered by more than 500 to 1. I offer you one chance to surrender. If you give up now, I will guarantee that you and your crew will be treated fairly. Jake looked at the alien commander for a long moment. Then he smiled. Admiral, let me tell you something about humans. We don't surrender. We don't give up. And we especially don't quit when we're fighting for our families. Your families are safe, Captain. The war with the Skarn is over. They have agreed to our terms. There is no need for more violence. You're right, Jake said. The war with the Skarn is over. But you missed the point. This was never just about the Skarn. This was about the galaxy learning to respect human life. Admiral Korvex's expression did not change, but Jake could see understanding in his silver eyes. You are not here to fight a battle you can win. You are here to send a message. Now you're learning. For 100 years, the galaxy has treated humans like servants. You watched our people die and called it politics. You ignored our pain and called it the price of peace. Today you learn that there is always a price for ignoring human suffering. Jake cut the transmission and turned to his crew. Commander Rick Hayes had been working frantically at his engineering station. His face was covered in sweat and his hands were shaking. Rick, how much power do we have? Everything, Captain. I've removed all the safety systems. The reactor is running at 200% capacity. The gravitational field generator is at maximum power. The weapons are charged, beyond their design limits. Rick paused and looked at his captain. This will destroy the ship, Jake. After this battle, the Blackstar will be finished. Jake nodded. He had known this moment would come. How long can we maintain this power level? Maybe an hour, maybe less. Lieutenant Susan Parker was checking her pilot controls. The ship's systems were responding slowly because of the massive power drain. Captain, the gravitational field is fluctuating. I'm not sure how well the ship will maneuver. Do your best, Susan, that's all any of us can do. The battle began when the alien fleet opened fire. 500 ships unleashed their weapons at the same time. The space around New Haven lit up like a star as thousands of energy beams and plasma missiles converged on the Blackstar. The gravitational field around the human ship bent and twisted the incoming attacks. Most of the weapons missed completely or curved away into empty space. But some got through. The Blackstar shook as energy beams hit its hull. "Hull damage on decks 7 and 12, reported Lisa Carter. "But the armor is holding." Jake watched the tactical display as Susan piloted the ship into the alien formation. The Blackstar moved like a wounded animal, slower than before but still deadly. It flew between the massive alien vessels, using their own size against them. The Blackstar's weapons fired continuously. Each shot was more powerful than anything the galaxy had seen before. Nexari battleships broke apart under the concentrated fire. Zephyrian dreadnoughts exploded in balls of plasma. Voidkin energy ships simply vanished, their exotic matter dispersing into space. But there were too many enemy ships. For every alien vessel the Blackstar destroyed, 2 more moved in to take its place. The human ship was taking more and more damage as its systems failed under the massive power strain. "Captain," Rick called from his station, "the reactor is overheating. I can't keep this power level much longer." "How many enemy ships are left?" Jake asked. Lisa checked her tactical display. 237, sir. We've destroyed almost 300 ships." Jake felt pride in his chest. His crew had accomplished something impossible. They had faced the largest fleet in galactic history and cut it in half. But it was not enough. The Blackstar shuddered as another wave of enemy fire hit its hull. Sparks flew from control panels and the lights flickered. The ship was dying, but it was not giving up. "Admiral Corvex is transmitting," Lisa reported. The Nexari commander appeared on the screen again. His perfect formation was gone. His massive fleet had been reduced to scattered groups of damaged ships. His silver eyes showed something Jake had never seen in an alien before: respect. "Captain Morrison, you have made your point. In 30 minutes you have reminded the galaxy why humans should never be underestimated. But your ship is failing. Your crew will die if you continue this fight. I ask you again, will you surrender?" Jake looked around his bridge. His crew was still at their stations, still fighting, still refusing to give up. They were humans, and humans did not quit. "Admiral," Jake said, "let me tell you what's going to happen. The USS Blackstar is going to continue fighting until every system fails. My crew and I are going to die here, in the ruins of New Haven Colony, defending the memory of our people. And every time someone in this galaxy thinks about attacking human civilians, they're going to remember this battle. They're going to remember that humans never forget, and humans never forgive." Jake paused, looking directly at the alien commander. "We entered this war, Admiral, and nothing survived our path, including us." The transmission ended. The final phase of the battle began. The Blackstar fought until its weapons stopped firing. It maneuvered until its engines died. It shielded itself until the gravitational field generator overloaded and exploded. In the end, Admiral Corvex's fleet limped away from New Haven with less than 100 ships remaining. They had won the battle, but they had learned a lesson that would last for generations. 6 months later, the Galactic Coalition formally apologized to humanity and offered full membership with expanded rights and protections. Human colonies received the best defensive systems available. Human officers were promoted to positions of real authority. The galaxy had learned that humans were not weak. They were not servants. They were survivors who would fight impossible battles to protect their families. The USS Blackstar had entered the war, and nothing had survived its path. But its sacrifice had changed everything. The legend lived on. The emergency alert started at 3 in the morning. Admiral Lisa Carter rolled out of bed when her communicator began screaming. She grabbed it with shaking hands, still half asleep. "What is it?" she asked. "Ma'am, you need to get to command right now," came the voice of Lieutenant Ben Sullivan. "We have a situation." Lisa threw on her uniform and ran to the command center. When she arrived, the room was buzzing with activity. Officers were running between stations, pointing at screens and talking in excited voices. "Report," Lisa said. Ben turned to her with wide eyes. "Admiral, we just received a transmission. It's from the USS Meridian." Lisa felt her heart stop. The Meridian had been missing for 15 years. Everyone assumed it was destroyed somewhere in deep space. The ship had left Earth with 200 crew members on an exploration mission. They were supposed to return after 5 years. "Are you sure?" Lisa asked. "Yes, ma'am. The signal is definitely from Captain Jake Morrison. He's requesting permission to dock at Luna Station." Lisa stared at the main screen. There, floating in space near the edge of their solar system, was a ship. But it didn't look like the Meridian she remembered. The vessel was 3 times larger than before. Its hull seemed to shimmer and change color as she watched. Strange patterns of light moved across its surface like living things. "My God," she whispered. "What happened to them?" The communication officer turned around. "Admiral Captain Morrison is requesting to speak with you directly. Put him through." The screen flickered and Jake Morrison's face appeared. Lisa gasped. The man she remembered had been young, maybe 35 years old. This Jake looked older, but not 15 years older. His hair was silver, and there were scars on his face she had never seen before. But his eyes were different. They seemed to glow with an inner light. "Hello, Lisa," Jake said with a smile. "It's good to see you again." "Jake, where have you been? We thought you were dead. What happened to your ship?" "It's a long story. We need to talk. All of us. I need to speak with Earth's leaders and the Galactic Council." Lisa noticed something strange in his voice. It sounded like multiple people were speaking at once, creating a strange echo effect. "Jake, how many people are on your ship?" "About 3,000. 3,000? But you left with only 200? "I know. We made some friends along the way." Before Lisa could ask more questions, her scanner officer called out, "Admiral, you need to see this. The ship's energy readings are off the charts. They're showing power levels higher than our entire defense grid." Lisa looked at the numbers on her screen. The Meridian was producing more energy than should be possible. Their best ships could barely manage a tenth of what she was seeing. "Jake, what kind of power source are you using?" "Something new." "Don't worry, it's completely safe. Can we dock at Luna Station?" "I need to run security scans first." "Of course. But Lisa, your scans won't work on us anymore. We exist in multiple dimensions now." Lisa didn't understand what he meant, but she ordered the scans anyway. The results made no sense. The ship appeared solid on some sensors but invisible on others. Heat scanners showed it was room temperature, but energy detectors said it was burning hotter than a star. "This is impossible," Ben said, staring at his instruments. The Meridian began moving toward Luna Station. Lisa watched in amazement as the ship seemed to phase through their defensive barriers without setting off any alarms. It was like the shields didn't even know the ship was there. "How are they doing that?" someone asked. "I don't know," Lisa replied. As the ship got closer, more details became visible. The hull wasn't made of any metal Lisa recognized. It looked like it was carved from crystal, but it bent and flexed like living tissue. Sections of the ship seemed to be transparent, showing rooms inside that were bigger than should fit in the space available. "Admiral," the communication officer said, "I'm getting reports from around the galaxy. Every major government is asking about the ship. Word is spreading fast." Lisa nodded. She could imagine the panic this would cause. A human ship with impossible technology would make everyone nervous. The Corvani Empire considered themselves the most advanced civilization in the galaxy. They wouldn't like being shown up by humans. The Meridian reached Luna Station and began docking procedures. Lisa watched as the ship's hull seemed to melt and reform around the docking clamps. It was like watching liquid metal, but controlled by intelligence. "Docking complete," came the report. "Open a channel to the station," Lisa ordered. The screen showed the main docking bay of Luna Station. The airlock opened and people began walking out. Lisa counted them as they appeared. There were humans, but also beings she had never seen before. Some were tall and thin, almost transparent, with skin that looked like starlight. Others appeared to be made of living crystal, their bodies catching and reflecting light in impossible ways. A few looked like they might be machines, but they moved with the grace of living creatures, and leading them all was Jake Morrison. He looked around the docking bay and smiled. Then he looked directly at the camera. "Hello, Earth," he said. "We're home." Lisa felt a chill run down her spine. Something told her that nothing would ever be the same again. The galaxy was about to change, and humanity was about to become something completely different. She grabbed her communicator and began making calls. The President needed to know. The Galactic Council needed to know. Everyone needed to know that the Meridian had returned, and it had brought friends. As she watched Jake and his impossible crew walk through Luna Station, Lisa couldn't help but wonder what they had found out there in the dark between the stars. And more importantly, what it had done to them. The emergency alert that had woken her up was just the beginning. She could feel it in her bones. The real emergency was just starting. Admiral Lisa Carter stood in the observation deck of Luna Station, watching through the thick glass as Jake Morrison's crew continued to exit their ship. She had been counting for 2 hours, and people were still coming out. The numbers didn't make sense. The Meridian was big, but not big enough to hold 3,000 beings. "How is this possible?" she asked Ben Sullivan, who stood beside her with a tablet full of readings that made no sense. "I don't know, Admiral. The ship's interior space appears to be larger than its exterior dimensions. That should be impossible." Lisa watched as more strange beings walked through the docking bay. The tall, transparent ones moved like they were floating instead of walking. Their feet barely touched the ground. The crystal creatures made musical sounds when they moved, like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "Admiral," a voice called from behind her. Lisa turned to see Dr. Amy Brooks walking toward them, but this wasn't the Amy Brooks she remembered. 15 years ago, Amy had been the Meridian's medical officer. She was a small woman with brown hair and kind eyes. The person walking toward Lisa now looked like Amy, but everything about her was different. Amy's eyes glowed with a soft blue light. When she moved, Lisa could see through her for just a moment, as if she wasn't completely solid. And when Amy smiled, Lisa felt a strange warmth in her mind, like someone had just shared a happy memory with her. "Hello, Lisa," Amy said. "It's wonderful to see you again." "Amy, is that really you?" "Yes, though I'm quite different now." "We all are." Lisa studied Amy's face. "What happened to you out there?" "We learned things. Amazing things. Our minds expanded beyond what we thought was possible for humans." Ben stepped forward with his scanner. "Dr. Brooks, may I take some readings?" Amy laughed, and the sound was like music. "Of course, but your instruments won't understand what they're seeing." Ben ran his scanner over Amy. The device immediately started beeping in confusion. Numbers flashed on the screen that made no sense. According to the readings, Amy existed in 17 different dimensions at the same time. "This can't be right," Ben muttered. "Actually, it is," Amy said. "I can see quantum particles with my eyes now. Watch." Amy reached out her hand toward the wall. Instead of touching it, her hand passed through the metal like it was water. She pulled her hand back and the wall was perfectly intact. "How?" Lisa whispered. "Matter is mostly empty space," Amy explained. "Once you understand how atoms really work, you can move between them. It's like learning a new language." A new voice spoke from the doorway. "Amy, are you showing off again?" Lisa turned to see Rick Hayes, the Meridian's former navigator. Like Amy, he looked similar to how she remembered him, but changed. Rick's hair had turned completely white, and his eyes seemed to hold tiny stars inside them. "Rick," Lisa said, "you look different?" "Yes, we all do. The experience changed us in ways we never expected." Ben pointed his scanner at Rick. The readings were just as confusing as Amy's had been. "Rick, how do you navigate now? Do you still use computers?" Rick smiled. "I don't need computers anymore. I can feel the shape of space itself. Watch." Rick closed his eyes and held out his hands. In the air between his palms, a three-dimensional map appeared. It showed their solar system, but with details no human instrument could detect. Mars is going to have a small solar storm hit it in 3 hours, Rick said, pointing to a spot on the map. Jupiter's moon Europa has a pod of space whales swimming under its ice. And there's a Corvani spy ship hiding behind our moon right now. Lisa grabbed her communicator. Command, do we have any unidentified ships in our system? Let me check. Admiral, came the reply. After a moment, the voice returned. Admiral, we just found a cloaked Corvani vessel behind the moon. How did you know? Lisa stared at Rick. How did you do that? Space isn't empty, Rick explained. It's full of information if you know how to read it. The beings we met taught us how to listen to what the universe is saying. More crew members began arriving in the observation deck. Lisa recognized some faces, but they were all changed. Paul Davis, the former security chief, now seemed to be made partly of shadow. When he moved, darkness moved with him like a living thing. Paul, Lisa said carefully, what can you do now? Paul smiled and reached into his pocket. He pulled out what looked like a simple metal rod. But as Lisa watched, the rod began to change. It stretched and twisted, becoming more complex. Within seconds, Paul was holding a device that looked like advanced technology. I made this from the metals in my pocket, Paul said. Iron, copper, a few other elements. Once you understand how atoms want to connect, you can convince them to form whatever you need. He handed the device to Ben. This is a scanner that can see through dimensions. It should help you understand our ship better. Ben took the device with trembling hands. When he turned it on, holographic displays appeared in the air around them. The displays showed the Meridian, but not as a normal ship. It existed in multiple layers of reality at once. My God, Ben whispered. Your ship is bigger on the inside, because most of it exists in other dimensions. Exactly, Paul said. We learned that reality has many layers. Most people only see one layer, but there are countless others. Lisa felt overwhelmed. How many of you can do these things? All of us, Amy replied. Every human who made the journey. The abilities are different for each person, but we've all been changed. What about the non-humans on your ship? Our friends? They're refugees, mostly. Their worlds were destroyed by wars or disasters. We offered them sanctuary. A new being entered the observation deck. This one looked like it was made of living metal, but it moved with grace and purpose. When it spoke, its voice sounded like wind through trees. Greetings, Admiral Carter. I am called Harmonic of Distant Stars. I speak for the architects. Lisa had never heard of the architects. What are the architects? We are an old race. Very old. We built great cities among the stars before your species learned to make fire. But our worlds are gone now, destroyed by those who fear change. I'm sorry for your loss. Thank you. But we have found hope with your people. Humans have a gift that is very rare in the galaxy. You can adapt and grow in ways most beings cannot. This is why the Ancient Ones chose to teach you. The Ancient Ones? Amy stepped forward. The beings who taught us, Lisa. They're older than any civilization we know. They exist beyond normal space and time, and they've been waiting for a species, like humanity, for a very long time. Lisa felt a chill. Waiting for us? Why? Because the galaxy is about to change, Jake Morrison said as he entered the room, and someone needs to help guide that change. Lisa turned to face her old colleague. Jake looked tired but determined. In his hand, he carried what looked like a sphere of pure light. Jake, what is that? A gift from our teachers. It contains knowledge that will change everything. But first, we need to talk to Earth's leaders and the Galactic Council. They need to understand what's coming. What's coming? Jake looked out the window at the stars. A convergence, Lisa. All the old rules are about to change, and humanity is going to be at the center of it all. Lisa realized that her life, and the life of everyone in the galaxy, was about to become very different. The crew of the Meridian hadn't just returned home. They had returned as something new, something powerful, something that would change everything. And she wasn't sure if that was wonderful or terrifying. The news about the Meridian spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Within hours of the ship's return, every major government knew that humanity had gained impossible technology. The reactions were swift and predictable. Admiral Lisa Carter stood in the war room on Luna Station, watching reports come in from across known space. The Corvani Empire had mobilized their science fleets. The Vortan Confederacy was moving battle groups toward human space. Even smaller governments were making emergency calls to their allies. "Admiral," Lieutenant Ben Sullivan said, looking up from his communications station, "the Galactic Council is demanding an emergency session. They want Captain Morrison to appear before them within 48 hours. Lisa nodded. She had expected this. The galaxy's power structure was built on everyone knowing their place. The Corvani had the best technology. The Vorthons had the strongest military. Humans were supposed to be the newcomers who stayed quiet and followed orders. "What's our status with Earth Command?" Lisa asked. "President Kate Nelson is flying in from Earth. She'll be here in 6 hours. She's bringing the entire cabinet with her." "Good. We'll need them." The door to the war room opened and Commander Steve Rodriguez walked in. Steve had been Jake Morrison's second in command on the Meridian. Like the others, he had been changed by whatever happened in deep space. Steve's most obvious change was his eyes. They were completely black now, like looking into deep space itself. But when he looked at someone, they felt like he could see everything about them, past and future. "Admiral Carter," Steve said with a slight smile, "I thought you should know that we have visitors." "What kind of visitors?" "The kind that don't announce themselves. There are 17 Corvani ships hiding in the outer system. They think their cloaking technology makes them invisible." Ben checked his scanners. "I'm not picking up anything." "Your instruments can't detect them," Steve explained, "but we can feel them. They're trying to study us from a distance." Lisa felt a chill. The Corvani were famous for their advanced science, but they were also known for taking what they wanted. If they thought human technology was too dangerous, they might try to destroy Earth before humanity could use it. "Are they a threat?" Lisa asked. "Not yet, but they're scared. Fear makes people do stupid things." Before Lisa could respond, alarms began sounding throughout the station. The main screen lit up with an incoming transmission. "This is High Commander Zex Corvani of the Imperial Science Fleet," came a cold voice. "We demand immediate access to the human vessel designated Meridian. Refusal will be considered an act of war against the Corvani Empire." Lisa looked at Steve, who just shrugged. "Should I handle this?" "Go ahead." Steve stepped forward and activated the communication system. "Hi, Commander, this is Commander Rodriguez of the Meridian. Your request is denied. You dare refuse the Corvani Empire?" The alien's voice was filled with rage. "We have 17 ships in your system. Surrender the vessel immediately." Steve smiled, and Lisa felt the temperature in the room drop several degrees. When Steve spoke again, his voice carried a power that made everyone in the room step back. "Hi, Commander. You have 16 ships in our system. Your lead vessel, the Dominator, suffered a complete power failure 30 seconds ago. Your crew is currently floating in space, wondering why all their technology stopped working." On the main screen, they could see a massive Corvani warship suddenly become visible. It was tumbling slowly through space, completely dark. Ben's scanners immediately picked up the ship. "Admiral, they're broadcasting a distress signal. Complete systems failure." High Commander Zex Corvani's voice came back, but now it sounded worried instead of angry. "What did you do to our ship?" "Nothing permanent," Steve replied. "I simply asked their computer systems to take a nap. Your crew is safe, but I suggest you reconsider your approach." "This is impossible. Corvani technology cannot be affected by external forces. Your technology is based on the idea that consciousness and matter are separate things," Steve explained patiently. "Once you understand that consciousness can directly affect matter, many things become possible." Lisa watched in amazement as the dead Corvani ship suddenly came back to life. Its lights turned on and it stopped tumbling. "Your systems are restored," Steve said. "But High Commander, I want you to understand something. We could have destroyed all 17 of your ships just as easily. We chose not to because we don't want to be your enemies." The communication channel was quiet for a long moment. When the High Commander spoke again, his voice was much more respectful. "Commander Rodriguez, what do you want from us?" "Nothing. We want to help you just like we want to help everyone else in the galaxy." "Help us with what?" Steve looked at Lisa, who nodded. It was time to tell them the truth. "High Commander, are you familiar with the ancient records of your people? The stories about the dark time when your homeworld was attacked? Those are myths, legends from before we achieved spaceflight." "No, they're not. 3,000 years ago something attacked Corva Prime. Your people barely escaped. The attackers consumed your star system and moved on to other targets." Lisa saw fear creep into the High Commander's voice. "How could you know about that?" "Because we met them," Steve said simply. "In the deep dark beyond the galactic rim. They're called the Devourers, and they're coming back." The communication channel fell silent. Lisa could imagine the chaos on the Corvani ships as their commanders tried to process this information. Dr. Amy Brooks entered the war room, floating a few inches above the floor. Her presence filled the room with a sense of calm. "Steve, are you frightening the Corvani again?" she asked with a gentle smile. "Just explaining the situation." Amy stepped forward and spoke into the communication system. "High Commander, my name is Dr. Amy Brooks. I was the Meridian's medical officer. I know this is difficult to believe, but everything Commander Rodriguez told you is true." Amy gestured, and holographic images appeared in the air above them. The images showed star systems being consumed by massive dark ships. "This is what we found in deep space. The Devourers destroyed thousands of civilizations. They're heading toward our part of the galaxy now." High Commander Zex Corvani's voice was barely a whisper. "How long do we have?" 4 years? Maybe 5, Amy replied. "But there is hope. The beings who taught us how to expand our consciousness survived the last attack. They've been waiting for species that could help them prepare for the Devourer's return." "What kind of help?" "We need to work together," Steve said. "All of us. Humans, Corvani, Vorthans, everyone. The old way of thinking, where each species fights for dominance, won't work against the Devourers. They feed on conflict and destruction." Lisa heard new alarms sounding. Ben looked up from his station with wide eyes. "Admiral, we have incoming ships, Vorthan battle cruisers, 12 of them." The main screen shifted to show the new arrivals. The Vorthan ships were massive and heavily armed. They took positions around Luna Station in a classic attack formation. "Attention, human forces," came a new voice. "This is General Thax Vorthan of the Confederate Fleet. You will surrender the alien vessel and submit to Confederacy authority," Steve sighed. "And here I thought the Corvani were impatient." "Can you handle 12 ships as easily as you handled one?" Lisa asked. "Probably, but I'd rather not. Violence just makes everything worse." Steve activated the communication system. Again. "General Thax Vorthan, this is Commander Rodriguez. I assume you've been listening to our conversation with the Corvani?" "We have. Your claims about ancient enemies are clearly fabrications designed to make us afraid. Then let me show you something that might change your mind." Steve closed his eyes and held out his hands. The space around Luna Station suddenly filled with images, not holographic projections but actual three-dimensional scenes that everyone could see through their viewports. The images showed the Vorthon homeworld as it existed thousands of years ago. Then they showed massive dark ships arriving and beginning to strip the planet bare. "This is the real history of your world, General," Steve said. "Your people escaped to colony worlds and rebuilt your civilization, but you forgot where you came from." General Thaxvorthan's voice was shaking. This cannot be real." "It is, and unless we work together it's going to happen again. To all of us." Lisa watched as both the Corvani and Vorthon fleets began, backing away from Luna Station. The display of power had frightened them, but the historical revelations had shaken them to their core. "High Commander General," Amy said gently, "we're not your enemies. We're all facing the same threat. The question is whether we'll face it together or separately." The war room fell quiet as they waited for responses. Lisa realized that the next few moments would determine the future of the galaxy. Would the old enemies become allies, or would fear drive them apart when they needed each other most? 3 days after the confrontation with the alien fleets, Captain Jake Morrison finally agreed to tell the full story. He sat in the main conference room of Luna Station, surrounded by leaders from Earth and representatives from 12 different alien governments. Everyone wanted to know what had really happened to the Meridian during those 15 missing years. President Kate Nelson leaned forward in her chair. "Jake, we need to understand, where did you go? What changed you and your crew?" Jake looked around the room at all the faces watching him. His silver hair seemed to glow under the lights, and his eyes held depths that made people uncomfortable if they looked too long. "It started during our 3rd year in deep space," Jake began. "We were exploring a region beyond the galactic rim, farther than any human had gone before. Our mission was to map new star systems and look for habitable worlds." Dr. Amy Brooks, who was floating in her chair rather than sitting, added, "We were excited. Every day brought new discoveries, new planets, new forms of life, new possibilities for humanity's future. Then we found the barrier," Jake continued. "It wasn't visible to our instruments, but when we tried to cross into a particular region of space, our ship just stopped. Not our engines, not our power systems. The ship itself refused to move forward." High Scientist Vex Corvani, who had joined the meeting by hologram, interrupted. "A force field of some kind?" "No," Jake replied. "Something much stranger. It was like space itself was telling us to wait." Commander Steve Rodriguez stood up and walked to the large window that looked out at the stars. "We spent weeks trying to understand what was happening. Our instruments detected nothing unusual, but none of us could shake the feeling that we were being watched." "Watched by whom?" asked General Thaxvorthan, also participating by hologram. "The Primarchs," Amy said softly, though we didn't know that name yet. Jake nodded. "On the 43rd day they made contact. Not through our communication systems, but directly into our minds. All 200 crew members experienced it at the same time." Admiral Lisa Carter, who had been listening quietly, asked, "What did they say?" "They didn't use words," Jake explained. "They shared images, emotions, concepts that our language can't describe. But the basic message was clear. They had been waiting for us." "Waiting for humans specifically?" President Nelson asked. "Waiting for a species with our particular type of consciousness," Steve corrected. "They had been searching the galaxy for thousands of years, looking for minds that could adapt to what they needed to teach." Dr. Amy Brooks gestured, and holographic images appeared in the air above the table. The images showed beings that looked like they were made of pure light, existing in structures that defied normal physics. "The Primarchs exist in multiple dimensions, simultaneously," Amy explained. "They gave up physical form long ago to survive the last Great War. They've been hiding in the spaces between normal reality, waiting for the right species to help them." "Help them do what?" Vex Corvani demanded. "Prepare for the return of the Devourers," Jake said grimly. "The beings that destroyed their civilization, and countless others." The images changed, showing massive ships that seemed to be made of living darkness. These ships were consuming stars, turning entire solar systems into fuel for their war machines. "The Devourers aren't just conquerors," Steve explained. "They're parasites that feed on the life force of entire civilizations. They strip planets bare, consume the energy of stars, and use that power to build bigger fleets." "How do you fight something like that?" General Thaxvorthan asked. "You don't fight them," Amy said. "Fighting them with traditional weapons is like trying to put out a fire with gasoline. They turn conflict and destruction into more power for themselves." Jake stood up and moved to the center of the room. "The Primarchs taught us a different way. They showed us how to expand our consciousness beyond the normal limits of human thinking." "What does that mean exactly?" President Nelson asked. "It means learning to see reality as it really is," Jake explained. "Most beings only perceive a tiny fraction of what actually exists. There are layers upon layers of reality, dimensions, folded inside other dimensions, possibilities that most minds can't even imagine. Steve turned from the window. The training took 12 years. 12 years of learning to let go of everything we thought we knew about how the universe works. It was difficult, Amy added. Many times we wanted to give up and come home. Our minds weren't designed to handle that much information, that much possibility. The holographic images shifted again, showing the crew of the Meridian working alongside, the Primarchs and structures that seemed to exist in multiple places at once. But gradually, we began to understand. Jake continued. We learned that consciousness isn't separate from matter. Thought can directly affect reality if you know how to focus it properly. That's how you can do the things we've seen, Lisa realized. Moving through solid objects, creating energy from nothing, reading information from space itself. Exactly. And more importantly, we learned how to teach others. Vex Corvani leaned forward in his holographic projection. You're saying you can teach these abilities to other species? Yes, but only to those who are ready. The process requires giving up many old beliefs about how reality works. It's not easy for most minds to accept. What about the refugees on your ship? General Thax Vorthan asked. The non-human species we've seen? Steve answered. We encountered them during our final years of training. Their worlds had been attacked by scouts from the Devourer fleet. The Primarchs asked us to rescue as many as we could. These species had already begun the consciousness expansion process on their own, Amy explained. The approaching danger from the Devourers triggered something in their minds, a survival response that opened them to new possibilities. Jake returned to his seat. That's when we realized the truth. The Devourers aren't just coming to destroy civilizations. Their approach actually triggers evolutionary leaps in the species they're about to attack. A defense mechanism? President Nelson asked. More than that. It's like the universe itself is trying to create beings capable of stopping the Devourers. But most species don't have enough time to complete the evolution before they're destroyed. The room fell silent as everyone absorbed this information. Finally, Vex Corvani spoke. You're saying that humanity and these other species are meant to be weapons against the Devourers? Not weapons, Amy corrected gently. Healers. The Devourers became what they are because they chose the path of consumption and destruction. They can be changed back, but only by beings who have learned to exist in harmony with reality instead of trying to dominate it. How do we know this will work? General Thax Vorthan asked. Steve smiled. Because the Primarchs showed us what happened the last time someone tried it. Another species, in a different part of the galaxy about 50,000 years ago. The holographic images changed one final time, showing a beautiful blue-green world surrounded by ships of impossible design. The dark ships of the Devourers approached, but instead of attacking, they simply stopped. The Transcended Ones successfully converted an entire Devourer fleet, Jake explained. They turned destroyers into gardeners, parasites into protectors. The converted Devourers spent the next 1,000 years restoring the worlds they had previously destroyed. What happened to the Transcended Ones? Lisa asked. They moved beyond physical existence, like the Primarchs. They're still out there somewhere, watching and waiting. President Nelson stood up slowly. Jake, are you telling us that humanity is supposed to become like them? To give up our physical forms? Only if we choose to, Jake replied. The path has many stages. We're still at the beginning. But yes, eventually those who complete the journey will transcend physical limitations entirely. And if we refuse? If we choose to remain as we are? Jake's expression grew sad. Then we'll face the Devourers with traditional weapons and traditional thinking, and we'll lose just like thousands of other civilizations have lost. Admiral Carter asked the question everyone was thinking. How long do we have to decide? The main Devourer fleet will arrive in 4 years, Steve answered. But their scouts are already in our galaxy. They'll reach the outer systems within 18 months. So we have 18 months to convince the entire galaxy to undergo a fundamental change in consciousness? General Thax Vorthan sounded skeptical. We have 18 months to plant the seeds, Amy corrected. The change itself will happen naturally once beings understand what's possible. Fear of the Devourers will accelerate the process, just like it did for us. Jake stood up again and looked out at the stars. The choice is simple but not easy. Evolve or perish. Transcend or be consumed. Work together or die separately. He turned back to face the room full of leaders. The Primarchs are willing to teach anyone who asks, but they won't force the knowledge on anyone. Free will is sacred to them. Where do we start? President Nelson asked. With volunteers, Jake replied. From every species that's willing to try. We'll take them to the deep dark where the Primarchs wait. Those who complete the training will return to teach others. As the meeting continued, Admiral Carter realized that they were planning the biggest change in galactic history, not through conquest or politics but through evolution itself. Humanity, the newcomers to galactic civilization, were Abe. 6 months had passed since the revelation about the Devourers. The galaxy was changing faster than anyone had thought possible. Admiral Lisa Carter stood on the observation deck of the new Luna Command Center, watching ships from dozens of different species arriving and departing every day. The changes had started slowly. At first, only a few brave volunteers from each species had agreed to travel to the deep dark for training with the Primarchs. The Corvani had sent their best scientists. The Vorthons had sent their most elite warriors. Even smaller governments had chosen their finest minds to make the journey. But then the scouts arrived. 3 months ago, dark ships had appeared at the edge of the galaxy. They moved slowly, methodically, consuming small asteroids and dead planets to fuel their advance. The sight of actual Devourer vessels had ended all doubts about the threat humanity had described. Admiral, Captain Jake Morrison said as he joined her at the observation window. The morning reports are ready. Lisa turned to look at Jake. He continued to change as the months passed. His silver hair now seemed to move by itself, flowing like liquid metal. His eyes held tiny stars, and when he spoke, his voice carried harmonics that made people feel calm and hopeful. How many new volunteers today? Lisa asked. 47 ships. Representatives from 19 different species. The training centers in the deep dark are running at full capacity. Lisa nodded. The transformation of the galaxy was accelerating. Every person who completed the consciousness expansion training returned home able to teach others. The knowledge spread like wildfire, changing entire worlds within weeks. What about the resistance movements? Jake's expression grew sad. Still active. The Hegemony Coalition refuses to believe the Devourer threat is real. They think this is all a human plot to take over the galaxy. The Hegemony Coalition was a group of smaller governments that had always resented the power of the major empires. They saw humanity's new abilities as just another form of domination, no different from Corvani technology or Vorthon military might. Are they still trying to attack our ships? Yes, but they can't hurt us anymore. Their weapons pass right through our vessels. We exist in too many dimensions for traditional attacks to affect us. Dr. Amy Brooks floated into the observation lounge, her body now semi-transparent and glowing with soft light. She had progressed further along the consciousness expansion path than most humans. Sometimes she existed in multiple locations at once, teaching different groups simultaneously. Lisa, Jake, she said with a warm smile. I have wonderful news from the training centers. What kind of news? Lisa asked. The first Corvani student has achieved dimensional transcendence. High scientist Vex Corvani himself completed the final stage this morning. Jake smiled. How is he handling it? Better than expected. He said that for the first time in his life, he truly understands what science is supposed to accomplish. Not domination over nature, but harmony with it. Lisa watched as a group of mixed ships prepared to depart for the deep dark. Humans, Corvani, Vorthons, and several other species were traveling together as equals. 6 months ago, such cooperation would have been impossible. Amy, how many of our people have reached full transcendence now? About 300 from the original Meridian crew. Another 1,000 from the volunteers who joined us in the deep dark. The number grows every day. Commander Steve Rodriguez materialized next to them. He no longer needed to walk through doors. His consciousness could appear anywhere he focused, his attention. The afternoon briefing is ready, he announced. We have updates from all sectors. They moved to the command center. where holographic displays showed the current state of the galaxy. Green dots represented worlds that had accepted the consciousness expansion training. Red dots showed Devourer scout positions. Yellow dots marked worlds that were still undecided. "Report," Lisa said. "The Vorthon Confederacy has officially disbanded their military," Steve began. "General Thax Vorthon completed his training last week. He says that beings who understand true reality don't need weapons. What about their defense against the scouts? They don't need traditional defenses anymore. The transcended Vorthons can simply convince the scout ships to sleep until the main fleet arrives." Amy pointed to another section of the display. "The Corvani Empire has begun dismantling their research facilities. They're converting them into consciousness expansion centers. Vex Corvani believes they can train their entire population within 2 years. "That's faster than we hoped," Jake said with satisfaction. Lisa studied the red dots that showed Devourer positions. "How close are the scouts now?" "The nearest ones will reach inhabited systems in 6 months," Steve replied. "But we're ready for them." "Define ready." Jake stepped forward and gestured at the display. The view changed to show the deep dark, where thousands of ships from hundreds of species work together in perfect harmony. "We now have 18 fully operational training centers," Jake explained. "Each one can handle 1,000 students at a time. More importantly, we have over 10,000 fully transcended beings ready to confront the Devourers." "Will that be enough?" "More than enough. The Primarchs estimate that 100 transcended minds working together can convert an entire Devourer fleet. We have 100 times that number." Amy's expression grew thoughtful. "The real question isn't whether we can stop the Devourers. It's what happens afterward." "What do you mean?" Lisa asked. "Once the Devourers are converted back to their original nature, they'll want to help restore what they destroyed. But that process could take thousands of years. Do we stay to help them, or do we move on to the next challenge?" Steve smiled. "That's a good problem to have." New alarms sounded in the command center. But these weren't warning alarms. They were celebration signals. "What's happening?" Lisa asked. Jake's face lit up with joy. "The first conversion has succeeded. The Devourer scout ship in the Antares system has stopped consuming planets. It's now helping to restore the worlds it damaged." The main display showed images from the Antares system. A massive dark ship that had been stripping a planet bare was now using its power to rebuild the world's ecosystem. Green plants were growing where there had been only ash. "How?" Lisa whispered. "A team of transcended Corvani made contact with the ship's consciousness," Amy explained. "They showed the Devourers what they used to be before fear and hunger consumed them. The ship remembered its original purpose and chose to change." More celebration signals began sounding. Across the galaxy, other scout ships were making the same choice. The conversion process was working better than anyone had dared hope. "This is incredible," Lisa said. "You're actually saving them." "We're all saving each other," Jake corrected. "That's what consciousness expansion really means. Understanding that we're all connected, all part of the same universal story." Over the following weeks, the transformation of the galaxy accelerated beyond all predictions. Entire civilizations chose to abandon their old ways and embrace consciousness expansion. Wars that had lasted for centuries ended overnight, as former enemies discovered they could share thoughts and feelings directly. The Devourer main fleet, when it finally arrived, found a galaxy that welcomed them instead of fighting them. One by one, the massive dark ships chose to remember their original nature. They began using their incredible power to restore destroyed worlds and help new civilizations grow. Lisa found herself promoted to Galactic Coordinator, a position that didn't exist 6 months earlier. Her job was to help coordinate the restoration efforts as former Devourer ships worked alongside transcended beings from hundreds of species. On the first anniversary of the Meridian's return, Lisa stood once again on the observation deck of Luna Station. But now she could see ships that existed in multiple dimensions, beings of pure light working alongside physical creatures, and planets that glowed with renewed life. Jake Morrison appeared beside her, though he spent most of his time now in the deep dark teaching new students. "Any regrets?" he asked. Lisa thought about the question seriously. Humanity had given up its innocence, its simple view of reality. Many humans now existed more in other dimensions than in normal space. Earth itself was becoming a training center for consciousness expansion. But the galaxy was at peace for the first time in recorded history. Entire species that had been extinct were being restored by converted devourer ships. New forms of life were emerging as transcended minds learned to create rather than just discover. "No regrets," Lisa said finally. "This is better than anything we could have imagined." "The Primarchs are proud of humanity," Jake said. "They say we've exceeded even their expectations. We've become teachers of teachers, guides for an entire galaxy." Amy Brooks materialized next to them, now existing as pure consciousness most of the time. "The next phase is beginning," she announced. "We've received contact from another galaxy. They're facing their own devourer crisis." Lisa looked out at the transformed stars and smiled. Humanity had found its true purpose in the universe, not as conquerors or explorers, but as healers and teachers. They had become the species that helped others discover their own infinite potential. The age of conflict was ending. The age of consciousness was just beginning. And at the center of it all, the species that everyone had once considered newcomers to the galactic community had become the architects of